by horse players for horse players, AmWager is designed for speed, power, and ease of use. AmWager brings CAW-style tools to everyday horse players, including Dutching, ABC Ticket Maker, and Pro%, an advanced betting tool that lets you assign weighted percentages and build multiple structured wagers with a single click. Every month, AmWager turns the odds in your favor with 0% takeout on select tracks. These promos offer you up to $100 more for your winning bets and giving you value for your wagers not offered anywhere else. Rated 4.7 stars on Google with over 200 reviews, AmWager is trusted by horse players who expect more from their wagering platform. If you're looking for better tools and better value, you need AmWager. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit amwager.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 or older where applicable. Gambling problem? Please call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY.
Welcome to the Sport of Kings podcast, episode 347, sponsored by AmWager, where the horse player's king. Go to amwager.com to see all their user-friendly features and promotions, including their 0% takeout promos. As always, I welcome your feedback on Twitter/X. My handle is @Derby1592. That's Derby1592. And this week, I am joined by special guest, Optics EQ founder and NHC champ, John Doyle. The show today will focus on finding and exploiting value on Saturday's Gulfstream Park card, which is filled with stakes races, including the Grade 3 Holy Bull, which is the first big Derby prep of the year at Gulfstream Park. We'll talk about our strongest handicapping opinions and how we might leverage those opinions using optimal betting strategies. Hi, John. How's it going?
Hey, Chris, how you doing? Good to be here. It's been a while.
It has. But I know it's been a lot of new and interesting things you've done with Optics, and you'll get a chance to kind of talk to listeners about that. And in fact, that's kind of how I'd like to start things off is, what's your approach? How do you decide what races you're going to play or even take a look at? And then how do you decide whether you're going to bet on them? And then actually, how do you decide how you're going to bet on them? So kind of at a high level, what's your approach?
Right. So I use Optics. That's all I use. So people that are familiar with Optics, most people are familiar with the plot, Chris. And that's just like one leg of the table, because the way we look at racing is we handicap traditionally like the top categories: pace, speed, class, and form. We have something for each of those. And so, I look at all the information. There's some particular signals that kind of pop out of me where I might see that something that we might have an edge in, that like we do notes for races. Traditionally they were called trip notes, but we're kind of like, it's almost like charting races and then looking at different things. And over time, we've developed a set of signals that kind of point things out for us that might be opportunities and give us an edge where the other players might not have access to that information because it's not in the public domain. So I use the information like that, but when I'm actually going in and deciding who am I going to bet, what races I might bet, it always starts with the favorite. We always talk about that. Is the favorite vulnerable? You want to be beating the favorites. So that's kind of the first approach. And favorites be beat. And I kind of look at the information in Optics, look at maybe the plot, maybe there's a class edge that somebody has over the favorite, or there's a bad note or negative notes where the horse is getting easy trips, something to that effect where I can downgrade the favorite and then kind of start from there.
So let's talk a little bit about, for those that aren't familiar or vaguely familiar with, you mentioned two elements in Optics. First was the plot. Can you kind of describe real briefly what the plot is and how you use that?
Yeah, it's a three-dimensional pace tool. And what I'm really kind of looking for is horses that plot favorably will be horses that are usually toward quadrant one, horses that are going to leave, again, it all depends on the way the race shape kind of comes out. So there might be races where there's going to be a high speed rating, high contention, and that may favor horses coming off the pace. Races that are, low contention, low speed rating, where horses that are forward are going to be better. So, forward is usually quadrant one, or is quadrant one. in quadrants 3, and quadrants 2 and 4, horses that are going to come from behind. And there's the other component is late pace relative to horses in the field. So you always hear us say that squares are better for late pace, and that's true relatively. Horses that have late pace are going to be big squares. Horses are circles who are going to be late pace, going to be slower. So it's a quick visual way of maybe identifying horses that don't fit today's race relative to the field. Sometimes you'll see a horse and he'll plot as a quadrant 1. He's in a different race. He may plot as a quadrant 4. Again, it depends on who they're running against. It's all relative to the horses in the race. So we evaluate that. We use pace figures, running positions, late pace figures to actually build that plot. So that's what you're seeing. And again, it's a quick way of trying to assess, especially with the favorite, is this horse suitable for today's plot? And we take into consideration running styles. So we'll color code the running styles. So a red running style means it doesn't match. Like, for instance, a horse who may be a presser is kind of mapping on the plot as a closer. That's not good because that's not his run style. So you'll see his run style marked red. Horses that are green usually says that the way they're plotting today relative to this field fits their run style. The other thing is not every plot is the same. Some plots are more reliable than others, right? The horses, like when we look at the first leg here, it's going to be a young, 3-year-olds. Horses are developing. Their run styles haven't really been developed. They haven't run more, some of them haven't run more than one race. So there's a lot of growth and development going to happen in those horses. And we really don't know who they are. So when you look at the plot, it's just less reliable when you look at it like that. So those are the things you have to kind of consider as you're going through it. And that's what we try to do. We try to bring those components to it so people can understand, okay, is this something I really want to rely on the plot on? Or is there some other component of racing that I want to look at? Do I want to look at the speed, the class, form, those types of things?
So you also mentioned the optics notes and how they're a little bit different than your typical trip notes. And can you talk a little bit about that? And when you have optics notes that are colored green, what does that signify? And you have sometimes notes that are colored red, what that signifies?
Yeah, simply the green and red so the green is positive, the red is negative. Typically what we do is we analyze these certain keyword signals. And over the years, what we've been able to develop has shown that these horses improve significantly when they have a green keyword. They don't happen every race. They're a little bit, especially horses in their last race. It's you don't see them that often, but when they do, they kind of outperform their odds. And not all the time. Sometimes, it depends on how the horse is fitted into the race. Is the horse suitable to the distance and surface and all the rest? But in general, those horses outperform. And we do analysis on those, and that's how we elevate those types of keywords to green. And the same thing with red, just on the negative side. But the difference between kind of our notes and other people's notes are, like most notes I see are very descriptive, like the chart. They explain what happened. They don't really tell me much about how that impacted the running of the horse, or tell me anything about projecting where the horse might do better or how he can improve or regress based on that last performance. So we're kind of looking at the context of the horse's performance, and we're trying to simplify it for the users so that they can look at that quickly and really assess visually, was that performance good, neutral, or bad, and could suggest something in the horse's form that might be negative or positive. And so that's where we want to get to. It's almost like the Cliff Notes. I don't know, people, maybe the younger audience doesn't remember the Cliff. I don't even know if they're still around.
Now they just ask ChatGPT for a summary. They don't have any idea what a Cliff Note is.
Yeah. So when I read Shakespeare, I'm like, okay, it's very good. Well, what the hell is going on? What did he mean? Right? Well, I went to the Cliff Notes, and it kind of interpreted the race, didn't describe it, interpreted for me. And I think that's what notes does for people, interprets the performance versus just describe it.
Great. So one other thing you haven't touched on, but I think a thing that gets overlooked is in terms of importance, but really is important, is just your race selection and figuring out what races you actually want to spend time looking at and analyzing. And I know there are some tools in optics that kind of help you do that. So maybe describe a little bit about how, optics can help you figure out what races to spend time on.
Yeah, again, I think you want to start it off with the favorite. You want to see if the favorite, just in general, you can quickly look at the field. There's a thing called a V bar. If you go into our plot page or even our grid page, and by the way, we have a grid. The grid is our standard past performance. This just has all the information like everyone else has: pace figures, speed figures, running lines, all the rest. And it's sortable, it's filterable, it's easy to use. Uh, but typically, you can just look at some of the summary V bars and get a sense: is the horse fast enough? Is the horse in terms of class fit? And we kind of use uh, BRIS on the class ratings, and we use it a little different. We use the kind of the race ratings, not the class ratings. But the way we use it and the way we come up with the way we do our V bars is a little bit different, especially and also with speed figures. So basically, we try to create an index for class, speed, and plot. And so you'll see that very quickly. So you can get in a sense that which horses just fit along those lines. So if you're seeing horses that, especially horses that are morning line is kind of lower than normal, and you see they don't really fit in terms of class or speed, or they're off in a couple of those, that's a quick indication of which horses that maybe you want to kind of stay away from. And again, if you start with the favorite, and the favorite is the one that kind of looks a little off, that's a race you want to kind of focus in on and then drill down in. And then you can drill down and do kind of more of some of the standard handicapping with our stuff. Same thing if I'm looking at notes, and I've seen, like, for instance, the favorite has, like, the last three races had red keywords suggesting maybe he had better trips than normal. That's another thing I want to key on. So again, Chris, it really starts with the favorite and how I feel, that first race selection, and then go from there. So if I see, especially like at a pick five, when we look at a pick five, like the last five races of Gulfstream, I want to be beating the favorite at least three of those races. Pick four, I want to be beating the horse, at least three of those races. I want to, and I want to be really, if the favorites I'm going to be selecting in the sequence, I want to be really singling in on them too. I want to be really hitting them and not having to go deep in those races. So it's very important that we get the favorite right. It kind of sets everything up.
All right, so we will talk about some specific races in a moment, but before we do that, I always like to review the wagering menu at the track. We are discussing it's GP, Gulfstream Park this week. We've had them on a couple times, so I'll go quickly. It's kind of average in terms of takeout. They do have one player-friendly bet, the All Turf Pick 3, which is $3 minimum, 15% takeout. That's probably the most player-friendly bet. If you like playing the pick fives, we're going to talk about the late pick five, but in terms of being player friendly, the middle pick five, supposedly they do not allow CAWs to participate in that one. So if you're a regular pick five player, you may want to focus on the middle pick fives on a typical week or typical day, as opposed to the early or late pick fives. They also team up with Santa Anita for a coast to coast pick five and sunset pick six that are both supposedly also set up so they don't allow CAW participation. So those are places where you might have a little less fierce competition in the pools. Everything else is pretty wide open to the teams, especially at Gulfstream Park. The jackpot rainbow pick six, that's a terrible bet for retail players, even on a mandatory payout day. Probably want to avoid that. So if you are going to play the other pools, you just have to make sure you really have found value, and we're going to try to help you do that this week, because it's a pretty high bar to get over if you factor in takeout along with that fierce competition from the teams. So wager wisely. And we'll get started. Hopefully it help you come up with some wise wagers. John and I will start with the race 8, which would kick off the late pick 5, but there's all kinds of other pools you can bet into, and we'll talk about those as we go through this. This race 8 is a 3-year-old stakes race, and that's sort of the theme of the day. There's 4 stakes races in sequence. They're all for 3-year-olds. This one's for 3-year-olds colts going 7 furlongs on the dirt. Why don't you get us started, John, on this race? Well, at a high level, kind of where do you see this from a pace or flow standpoint? And then how would you assess the favorites, which will be pretty
Yes.
strong? There's going to be the
Yes.
6-horse Solitude Dude, who will be 6-5 on the morning line, but I think the 1-horse Class President at 5-2 will also vie for favoritism. What are you thinking about this race?
Yeah, it's tough. I know that sounds weird, but Solitude Dude, when you look at the plot, he's a Q1, he's in Q1s. That's good. That means he's going to be forward. He's a big square. But you have a lot of horses that haven't really defined themselves yet, like Class President. They just ran the one race. So it's very difficult to, you can do a lot of projecting here. But the one thing I'm a little bit against Solitude Dude, because really, there's nothing to argue. If you look at visually, we give grades for races, and this horse earned a B+ in both his first two starts.
So can you describe what that means, B+?
Yeah, a B+ in optics means it was visually a good race, and our tendency is to say that horse can make the leap to the next class level. In other words, that race is good enough, and it's one of the highest grades. A is the highest grade we give, so B+ is usually significant. Next time out, those horses win at a high rate, and they're able to make the significant change into the next class level. And he was B+ in his maiden win at Gulfstream, and then B+ in the Tampa Stakes race back on December the 6th. The thing is, I noticed, and this is just, and again, I don't have a lot of facts on this one, just a sense I get from playing for a long time. This horse earned a 97 and 96 on our figures. We're using the breast speed figures here. So that's a pretty high bar for a two-year-old, young 3-year-old, right? It's a pretty high number already. I don't know how much you can project improvement this early on, coming out of 2 sprints, and this is going to be another sprint. So, and the other thing that I'm a little concerned about, his class index is below this field. I don't think the 2 races that he come out of had really strong fields. And in fact, I looked at the Tampa race, the way the horses come back out of that race, kind of subpar. So he was very impressive, really kicked clear. Just a little concerned about the class level. You can't knock the speed figures, you can't knock the visuals on the race. It's just a matter of, you're going to be taking below even money on this horse to start a pick 5. And he's no cinch. I could see the horse being defeated, to be honest with you. Just when those horses just tend to kind of when they get those back-to-back early speed figures, usually they get it in the first race. He has such a high speed figure, they usually kind of regress a little bit. He really didn't regress at all, based on speed figures. So I'm a little concerned about that. I don't know what you normally see on that, Chris, but that's just a tendency that I get a little concerned, especially since the field he's going to face tougher field here. So that's my concern with him. Don't know. I really want to bet against him, but I think there's 3 horses that could compete against him in this race. The one we talked about, Class President, but he's no bargain at 5-2 in the morning line. I don't know where he'll go. I like horses that, and you can see on even on optics, he's a square. His late pace was very good in his opening race. I like horses that can really show distribution of energy late when they're in their first race. And that usually signifies that the horse has some upside, especially as the distances go a little longer. Now he's actually cutting back, but it wouldn't shock me for him to show some more speed. But he plots as a big square too. So that's one of the horses. But again, no bargain at 5-2. Epic Summer was a little bit interesting because his first race was B+, the one where we said he can make it to the next level. And then in his next race, there was a rail and speed bias at Gulfstream on the 3rd, according to our notes. So we can kind of forgive him a little bit of that performance. So if there's some upside from that debut, like we had projected with the B+, he can contend, and he's a much better price. I don't have the morning lines in front of me, Chris, but I think he'll be a much better price than those, the favorite and the second choice. So he's kind of an alternative. And then we have the 5, who is the Cox runner, he's probably the class of the field. So there's potential if that horse comes back, as an improved horse. When you look at his debut, he ran 89 on our on our speed ratings, 88 in the second race. So he's had a race over the track. He ran a pretty good race despite having traffic in the second race. So there's upside there. He's been away. You assume that horse maybe has some grow up potential. So he's another contender. So this is a race that, I mean, if I'm playing the pick five, or if you're playing the pick five, if you're strong on Solitude Dude, I guess you single. I'm not. So I'm either passing or I'm going to play against him. And I'm not sure. I probably will move to the pick four. I'll be honest with you, based on this. But that's kind of my assessment of that race.
Yeah, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with passing on a race. I think that's one thing people have to learn. You don't have to bet every race, and you don't have to play every pick five. So it sounds like you don't see a lot of value in this. You kind of think Solitude Dude's not solid enough to lean heavily on him and single him on the pick five, but you're not really thrilled about the value you're getting elsewhere. So you're kind of thinking, I just move on to the next race here, if I'm hearing you correctly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. And, I don't have much to add to your analysis. The only thing I would say is just to reinforce what you said about Solitude Dude. I mean, he was very fast. He's run 2 fast races, and they both weren't that long ago. So you don't, and he comes from a barn that sends him out running. So he just probably hasn't developed physically much since his first 2 races. So you don't expect improvement. If anything, you might see some regression. So I'm kind of with you there, although it's hard to knock his first 2 races, right? They were really good. And he really looks like a sprinter, right? He's bred to be a sprinter. Yes. He's not going to win the Kentucky Derby, but he could be a factor in races like the Alan Jerkins and things like that down the road. It seemed like Class President's sort of the potential horse, it seems kind of weird to have them cut back. I think they tried to get in another race and it didn't fill. So I think they're in this one, but he looks more like a horse that's going to do better as the distances get longer. And so I don't like the price you're getting on him, but in terms of projecting forward, I think in this field, he might be the one that might make some noise later on down the Triple Crown Trail, but I'm not excited about betting him either. So I'm kind of with you pretty much across the board in this race. Anything else you want to add on it before we move on?
No.
All right. So the lesson here is you don't have to bet every race. In fact, it's really important to learn that lesson and to exercise some discipline, because in terms of your long-term results will be much better if you pass races where you don't think you found anything. And in fact, pass the pick five if you can't. If, like John said, I want to find a pick five where I have 3 or 4 favorites I'm against, or I'm not going to play it. Well, that's the way you should do it. And when the first leg of the pick five is a race you don't like, why play it? If you really like the other 4 races, just play the pick 4, right? If you don't, then, just look for other pools to play in. So there's nothing wrong with passing races. But let's pass that one and go on to the next race. This is the only non-stakes race in the sequence, maybe one of the more interesting races from a betting standpoint. It's an allowance optional claimer on the turf, going a mile for older fillies and mares. So, John, what do you think about this race from a high level in terms of the way it's going to set up? And what do you think of the favorites? In this case, they're much more tepid in the prior race. We've got the 5-horse Multiverse at 3-1 on the morning line, and the 4-horse Mary's Lad at 4-1. I think Mary's Lad's going to be the favorite in here. I'd be surprised if it's Multiverse. But what do you think of those horses as the favorite, and what do you think of the race in general?
Okay, so this is where the favorites, how do I evaluate favorites using optics? I'm going to look at the 4, and just that for me, it's the horse I'm going to play against, just based on his plot. Horse plots in quadrants 4 and 3. We have 2 plots. One, we have a standard plot. What the standard plot tries to do is plots the most recent form of the horse. And then we have a surface distance plot. And then we have other plots, surface, and whatever. Below, you can select those. But the 2 main plots is a standard and surface and distance one. And it doesn't plot well in either one. So I'm just going to trust my information and play against that horse. If that horse was 10-1, I would probably be having another look at him. But at that price, I'm just based on what you're saying, I'm going to kind of look away from that horse. I just think the way the plot looks, it's a little messy, but it still looks like it sets up for stalkers who can finish. And that looks like the 2, 7, 11. And now, but there's issues with each of them. But I would say that's where kind of my handicapping would start. The other horse that I'm interested not so much in for win, but underneath that can make the exotics is Pierre, the number 6. This horse has a huge square. That means he has, relative to the field, he's got great closing ability on his standard distance plot. He's only run 3 times, but he's run all 3 times in the money, good races with good late pace on the turf. So that's a horse that, just looking at the plot, and that's kind of my assessment. And now as I kind of dig into a little bit more, looking at the race. So let's go to the 2.
Yeah, wait, just one thing, John.
Yeah,
just
sure.
In terms of this is a turf route. We just talked about dirt sprint. Are there things you're looking for typically in a turf route on the plot that you are you looking at it a little differently, interpreting it a little differently for a turf route than you would a dirt sprint? And if so, what's the differences?
Yeah, I guess we emphasize squares more on the turf because it's finishability on the turf, right? So sometimes you'll see speed figures too. Whoever's making them, they may underrate speed figures that have real slow paces but come home late fast, because it's just maybe overall the time for the race looks slow comparatively, maybe some other races. But I would not downgrade horses that can really finish on the turf. So yeah, I think we emphasize a little bit more on the turf, the squares, even more so than we would on dirt.
All right, great. So I just wanted to ask you that before you move on. So go ahead. What do you think? A little more. Let's dive a little deeper into the race. You already said you're willing to take a shot against the favorite, Mary's Lad. Who I think will be the post-time favorite. She's second choice on the morning line, or he's second choice on the morning line. I hate it when they have a female name in a male
Yes,
horse.
yes, I know.
I know it's Mary's Lad, which would be a boy, but still, just seeing Mary always makes me think female. So anyway, you're against that. So let's dig a little deeper. What do you think of the rest? Where do you have strong opinions?
Again, I'm more looking for horses that can stalk the pace and finish. And the 2 kind of fits on speed and class, but there's question marks, right? Came off the bench, had a slow start, trouble start. Sometimes I'm worried about that, especially I'm not a fan of the angle where the horse comes off a layoff and then has another layoff. It's just over the years, I just found that to be concerning. The works, though, since look good. I'm just looking at raw works. I don't have a workout report, but the works look good on turf. So maybe that's encouraging. He's obviously got a capable trainer.
And that comeback effort was on dirt, right?
Yeah.
And he was really a synth horse before that.
Yes. So that's a question mark. Is this horse handle the grass? I'm not a pedigree person per se. I want to see how they run. When I look at his notes, there's no indication that we, visually looking at the horse, think that the horse is really, this horse really needs to get to the grass. No indication of that. That doesn't mean the horse can't do. But if there was a turf projection in his back form, then I'd be really much more excited about this horse. But I still think he's a contender. I just put a fair odds about 9-2 for this horse for me.
That's about what he's on the morning line, 5-1. So
okay,
yeah.
so that's right on. So that horse would probably be a contender for me in my wagers. The other horse that I thought was kind of a little bit interesting, but what I don't like is the layoff on the 7, especially with that barn. It's kind of a low percentage barn, a little less confidence. The horse is capable, plots well. It's just, it's coming off that layoff, and I just don't have a lot of confidence with that trainer. But there's nothing wrong with that horse. So there's another horse you can consider, and especially if he floats. My fair odds on him is around 6-7-1, that kind of 6.5 to 7-1 for me.
Again, he's an 8-1 morning line, so he's about fair value on your line.
Yep. And then Sagan Viendo, again, Sagan Viendo, I think is how you say that. That horse is interesting to me. I thought the last race, based on our notes, kind of he got the lead and then just kind of let the other horse get the lead, who went wire to wire in that race. Now it doesn't. It didn't keep up, and it looks like the speed figure was low. But again, that was another race where the late pace was really heavy. So I mean, they went slow, but I wouldn't underestimate that performance. He's got races behind that would win this race. So he's a contender. I got him around 4-1, just like the two. So to me, those are my tier one horses, kind of, or top tier. I shouldn't say tier one, but top tier horses in this race. Because I just say maybe he bounce back, maybe he gets a trip, just stalking. He's forward. It's tricky getting that post position. So you have to use a little bit to get into position, but just in case he gets one of those stalking trips. The man up front is the speed horse. I just don't, I guess he can wire the field, but I'm just not have a lot of confidence in that. He's had perfect trips. I think he may need shorter than this. So, I got him about 11-1. The horse, again, I think is a long shot. I mean, I think I got him about 8-1, this Pierre. This is a horse that's a Woodbine horse. He's below on like the handicapping categories, but he's got like that massive square. And I'm just wondering if he can, especially if he floats even beyond his morning line, he could be a good exotics horse for me. So I may kind of see him in the seconds and thirds, probably focusing on the 2 or the 11, depending on which one looks better in terms of the morning line. And I'm going to stay away from Mary's Lad, even though, he's a contender. I'm just going to kind of trust my information. And on Multiverse, he's got clean form, but he's another one that settles for a lot of underneath slots, not a lot of underneath positions. This is his first time turf too, so that's a question mark, especially since he doesn't have the turf projections that I talked about in notes. So for me, he's kind of like lukewarm. So he's on the periphery of a contender. So maybe using him in third or fourth if I'm going into the tries and supers a little bit. But I'm going to try to look, like who's going to be the better price of the 2 and the 11, and then try to work the 6 into maybe into the lower rungs of the exotics.
Yeah, those the big fat squares in the middle of a plot are always really enticing, right? Like the 6 horse, it just says, it seems like he's likely to run, get a pretty good race. You said this kind of favors stalkers, but what overall pace? It seems like there's a lot of speed in here for a turf route. Would you agree with that? Does it seem like they're pretty contentious?
It is contentious. It does. Yes, it does. It just what I get concerned with sometimes, it's like these. I think it all depends on how people go after the 8, because I think the 8 looks like the clear speed in the race, and so I don't know if someone's going to. Sometimes the reluctance to go chase those kinds of horses heavy, let them just run their race, and it becomes more of a like horses in that second flight, not second flight, but maybe that first flight behind sit pretty decent chips, especially if they can get covered up and get a pretty decent chip. And they just kind of let that horse go. That's kind of what I'm thinking. But like the other thing is you can interpret these plots lots of different ways. So there's no one way of anything. And some people just want me to say, okay, this is absolutely what has to happen. It's just not the case. I'm sorry. That's the world, because like they all have intentions. They're given instructions. They have different intentions. They're trying to do something different. So yeah, I see the 8 kind of like as a flight onto his own. Maybe that's not the way it's going to happen, but I see him a flight onto his own, and then the others kind of behind there, kind of settling in position and not having to go that hard. Just let him go.
Yeah, it involves humans, and like you said, sometimes they're afraid to engage, especially if they know there's one horse that's going to be flying up front. They don't want to, get into a speed duel with that horse. So you might be right. They could all sit back. I brought that up partly just because, to me, the 11 horse seems like one that's going to be forward, could easily get hung wide, and has a tendency to not finish off the races, including its last 2. So I'm just wondering, you're pretty high on that one. I just thought I didn't see a scenario where that horse would win. So I'm just kind of curious how you see the race unfolding in a way that would enable that horse to be the winner, because I don't see it.
So if you look at his plot, is like you say, he's not hanging on. But if you look at his plot, he's a square though, right? And it's because he's coming out of a race where there was no pace in the race. And you could say, well, he didn't keep up and it was a slow pace. But they really came home fast. That's why. I mean, so like you have to look at it. Turf racing is kind of weird, right? It's a different dynamic. And it wasn't necessarily that he was like going so slow late. It was that they were going so fast up front. And I just think in this race, you could see relative to the field he plots as a pretty big square on standard, right off the pace, and a good square right in the middle there on surface and distance. So he's in a good position, like we said, plot-wise. And again, I got to trust my information relatively looking. And to your point, I think people will be off looking at his last race and say, wait, it was a slow pace and he couldn't hold on. Well, because they were coming home really fast. That's why. You know, it's different if, like in most dirt racing, what happens is the late paces, like the races are falling apart. So when you see a horse not finishing there, he's really not finishing. But it's different because some of these races on the turf, they're upside down compared to those races, right? Where their slower running is done early and all the late running is done late. So if you saw a horse that pressed, like a dirt horse who pressed a really fast pace and then backed up, you wouldn't knock him that much, right? You would say, okay, you know, it depends on like the situation, who he was running against, where he's going to end up next. But you wouldn't knock that race as much, right? Because you would say, well, he ran hard for part of the race and then he tired late, he faded late. That's kind of the way I look at it. That's the only thing. So I think he could get out. Like, in other words, if the 8 really goes, he goes. And then if the rest of the field is just going to settle in, he could, you know, maybe get that too wide stalking trip and just be get the first run. And if he does, he could be dangerous. Especially if he gets it a little bit earlier, like, you know, maybe as they're leaving the turn, he gets that jump, and maybe he's hard to run down. That's the scenario I'm looking at.
All right. Well, it may unfold that way. I think a key for that horse will be, does it get hung wide early?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
If they try to get that stalking trip, there's 3 or 4 others that might be looking for the exact same trip, and that almost will certainly lead to a wide first turn, and then it's going to be really hard for that horse to win, I think.
Yeah, that's a possibility. There's no doubt. There's no doubt about that.
So there's one horse you didn't mention, and it's the one I kind of think is the bet in here, and that's the 3 Ever Dangerous. What is it you didn't like about that horse? 'Cause I think that horse could be sitting off not too far back, but you know, he seems like he plots pretty well. His barn's been red hot. He's run well on the turf in the past at Gulfstream. So I'm just curious, you know, what is it about that horse that had you gloss over him as a contender?
Okay, so I saw that plot. When I first saw the plot, I was like very interested in this horse. But this is a 9-year-old, okay, who had favorable trips the last 2 races. So I'm looking at my notes and saying, okay, 2 wins, 2 favorable trips at Woodbine. 9-year-old starting a new form cycle, which is not a great angle for him. Like, he doesn't come off layoffs and do well, typically. Just, you know, I kind of look at the horse himself, you know, when I'm looking at layoffs too, trainer and then the horse themselves. Slightly below average on class. So I'm thinking this horse maybe uses this race as a way to get back to synthetic in his next race. And maybe the next time, if he runs a decent race, maybe there's improvement the next time out. So I'm going to pass this time because I don't think this is the right race for him. I think he's going to need a race.
So you just think it's not the horse, it's just this is not the time to play him. This is more of a prep, is what you're thinking.
I'm looking at it as a prep, yes.
So the other thing is you kind of have talked about your fair odds on a lot of these horses. So how do you come up with those fair odds?
Oh, let me tell you. If you just go into Optics plot page, you can rank horses by tier 1, win contenders, essentially tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. We have 3 sets of win contenders. I think you know a little bit about this.
Just a little, but I just wanted to prompt you.
Okay, and then you can rate them like exacta, trifecta, toss, and all you have to do is select where you think the horse ranks, essentially. And what we do is we create the fair odds value for you, and then we compare it to the live odds. So right in the plot, you can set that up for yourself, and that's what I do, and that's what I'm going to do. In fact, after this, I'm going to publish this so people who want to look at our information, you go to opticseq.com. There's a big thing called Focus, and kind of all the information that we've talked about have kind of got it laid out in a report on Optics Focus. Now, it is a subscription-based product, but the silver plan will get you there, and all this information is going to be there with the fair odds value, the ratings, my version of it, and then you can adjust it to your version, because you may have a different opinion. Like Chris said, he had a different opinion of that last horse that we discussed. And you could set it, and what it'll do, it'll adjust the fair odds to match your fair odds. And that's kind of what we do there. So it's a useful tool so that you can have some fun, and you don't have to worry about the math.
Yeah, and full disclosure, I work with John on this, helping to develop that, which is why I prompted him on that. But I do think if you don't like math, but you want to have some way of quantifying your opinion in a way that lets you see if you're getting value or not, it's a great way to do it. All you have to do is rate the horses using a drop-down menu, and it will figure out, based on your opinion of those horses, what the fair odds should be, and you can compare that, and it'll compare it to the actual odds and show you, and to the will pay, the projected odds based on the will pays, and let you know if there's some value there based on your opinion. And like John said, for Focus this week, he's going to rate all the horses in the races we talked about, and then if you you can look at that and then modify whichever horses you have different opinions on. It'll recreate the odds line. So I really do think it's a way for those of you who don't like doing math and don't necessarily have a good sense for what is value and what isn't. This is a great way to quantify your opinion if you use that tool. And I encourage any of you who are interested in something like that, give it a try. You might like it. It's sort of fun too. And I think it really improves your handicapping as well, because you get feedback on how you rated that horses, and horses that you rate highly when they don't run well, you can see that right away.
Yes. Excellent.
Okay, so given all this discussion we had, is there a bet buried in all those opinions? And if so, what are you thinking in terms of this race?
Oh, the race. Okay, race 9.
The race 9. Yeah.
Like I said, I think I'm going to kind of look at the odds at race time. And again, my win kind of contenders are the 2 and the 11. Get a sense of where they are, but I want it so it would be, potentially a win bet with one of those if it's high enough. Again, I want them kind of above the pretty, maybe edge of 20-30% above the fair market. And you'll see that, like when you look at our stuff, you'll see the actual edge percentage. And then I would probably try to get the air in the second and third slots underneath those horses, and try to figure out an exacta maybe, or trifecta using both the 2 and the 11 with the 6. So
you kind of narrow it down to 3 horses. The 6
yes.
is more of an underneath, but the 2 and the 11 you'd be using in the win spot as
correct. Correct.
Yeah, because none of those are favorites, right? Those are all going to be pretty decent prices, probably.
Yes. So that's my opinion on that race, and that's how I would play it. And again, that would be a race that, again, probably looking at the pick 4 too, because if we go back to the 8th race, I think I was against. Oh no, that was the. I'm sorry. Which race? Okay, so this is the night.
but this could kick off the pick 4,
this
right?
This kicks off the pick 4. Yeah, okay, so so this is an area where I would probably be just having the 2 and the 11 as A's and the B on the 6 even, because just in case that horse kind of surprises, like you say, maybe they do get bunched up and he comes runs right over the top of them late. So I would want to be on that horse, and not just as a C maybe, but as a B, because again, I think in these other legs, I might like favorite in the next race, and then the last two races, I'm kind of probably against the favorite. So this is maybe a pick four I might get involved.
Yeah, this is one that six Pierre is one where it's, if he were to win and you didn't bet him, you go back and look at the plot and say, "Wow, how did I not play that horse?" He
Yeah,
looks so good.
we have this mantra. I always told the folks, trust the information. I don't want to be ever not on the information, because look, nothing works every time, but there's a good track record with green keywords and good plots and stuff like that. And when you get paid, you get paid. Especially when you're talking about odds like that, you want to get paid. It's you don't want to be kicking yourself. So take a shot, trust the information, and that's you can win, but don't always win. But keep going.
As long as you get the price that you think you should get.
As long as
So
you get the
that,
price.
and that's where it helps to use something like that rating tool, so you know what is a fair price, because it is a fairly contentious race, and he's certainly no standout, but there is a price where he's probably playable, and 10-1 on the morning line, that might indicate value if he goes off at that price or higher. Sounds like.
I think he might be higher.
Yeah, he could.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, let's move on to the next race. We're back into the stakes races. This is another 3-year-old stakes. This is sort of the analog to the Swale Stakes, but it's for the fillies going 7 furlongs on the dirt, 3-year-olds. And this is another one that's very similar to the last one. There's sort of two horses that will be heavily bet. The 6 On Time Girl and the 4 Mythical both have very nice resumes.
Yes.
They're going to be heavily bet. What do you see? How do you see this race shaping up, and what do you think of the favorites?
Yeah, they look legitimate to me. I prefer On Time Girl a little bit. I just like that last race. Ran huge, given an 8-week freshener, working well, plots beautifully. It's going to Mythical is probably going to be on the lead, and this horse is going to be stalking the lead. And I think it's going to be those two, really, pretty much. The one horse that I thought was interesting from a long shot perspective was the 3 Chicane. This horse debut was a B plus. And remember, we always told you about B pluses being horses that have the potential to go to the next level. Well, the next race was at Aqueduct, and the speed figure was real low, our speed figure, but it turns out those speed figures were muted, because when I looked at the horses that ran next, they kind of improved by double digits, 2 or 3 of them. So I could just maybe ignore that. Even though the horse had a perfect trip, it probably was too much too soon, especially coming off that big race. And then came back in the cash run, and you look at that race and say, well, that was such a great race. But again, having notes is very important, because we knew there was a bias that day. So she was against the bias. So she's got room for improvement. And any kind of improvement puts her right in the mix with these others. So she's my horse that, if I look at this race, I'm kind of thinking maybe the 6 over the 3 in a solid exacta, maybe 3 to win if this horse really kind of floats. My fair price on the horse is 6. What is he on the morning line, Chicane?
12-1 on the morning line.
12-1. So that might be a win bet for me. And then maybe over the On Time Girl, especially if Mythical goes off the favorite. I think that would be because I have On Time Girl a favorite over Mythical. Now, Mythical's really fast. Now, the reason why I'm a little concerned Mythical is the horse was rank and had a lone lead, and she, our opinion, and you look at the notes, is she's a sprinter. If you look at the optics keyword notes, sometimes these horses coming out of those 2-turn races, sprinters, and they go back into sprints, I get a little concerned with maybe dull their speed a little bit. I don't know. I get concerned a little bit about that. So that's my only concern. I could see like On Time Girl being right on her flank, passing her, and then maybe Chicane coming late. That's kind of the way I'm looking at the race, or maybe even Chicane kind of stalking. I don't know, but those are the two that where my opinion, like where I kind of maybe think about betting the race. The 8 is interesting to me. It's another one of those horses that showed really good late pace in the last race. The maiden win is a B plus, which suggests upside again. Steady work since. And that's another price play, but I think that horse is. I'm more like probably 8-1. And I think that what is he 5-1 or something? I bet you in the morning line. The
5-1, yeah,
yeah.
5-1.
So I just would watch the price there. Again, we're trying to create value out of these bets. Not so much like who do we like, right, Chris? And so to me, I think the 6 is the best horse, but the 3's could challenge at a price.
Yeah, so a couple of things I just add on Mythical. She was ranked, but they were going 2 turns, and she likes to run, and now
Yeah,
they're cutting back to the sprint. And I thought was what I liked really about her race 2 back was she settled a little and finished, so she didn't have to be on the lead. She showed she doesn't need the lead to win, and now she's she's the fittest she's ever been in her life coming back from that 2-turn race, and they won't have to grab her in this race because they're going a lot faster early, but she doesn't necessarily have to be on the lead. She might be there just because she's probably faster than the other horses, but she doesn't have to be. If they're going really fast and somebody wants to lead, she could probably sit off. So I'm maybe a little higher on her than you. Just she seems like a true, very talented filly.
Oh yeah.
She beat the boys, and I do think she's very precocious. She's probably not the type that's going to get a lot faster, but she's pretty fast already and seems to have a tactical edge on Time Girl, who I think has more of the upside. But it all comes down to trip. So between those two, I'm kind of leaning more towards Mythical than you, and you're more on Time Girl. But I think those are the two to beat. But I also totally agree with you on Sakane, who won on debut sprinting, and then her next 2 were routes, right? And maybe she's just a sprinter. And in fact, she had to shipped all the way from Florida to New York. Anytime it's in the wintertime in New York, I can toss those races. And her race wasn't that bad, but she just, she kind of got tired late. And then, they shipped her all the way back to Florida again. And she got a little tired at the end in that race. So again, that was a mile. And now she's cutting back 7 furlongs. So I think, I agree with you. She seems to be the one horse with the most upside. We don't know. Maybe that cutting back to sprinting will be exactly what she's been waiting to do. And, with those 2 routes under her belt, she's ready to really fire a big race. And she may get overlooked with those other 2 taking all the money.
Right. So if she's anywhere near that morning line, she seems
like the bet. She's not the most likely winner, but she's probably the best bet in the race. So you're thinking maybe play her to win and back her up on or box her with On Time Girl. Is that kind of what you were thinking?
Yes, exactly right. Yep.
All right.
Yep.
And if you were playing the picks in here, what would you do? How would you play this one?
Yeah. Well, 3 would be an A.
Okay.
Just don't know if the 6 would be an A or a B. Just
So you'd use both of those and maybe lean on the 3 as the value.
Yes. Yeah. I would probably use both of them.
What about
it all depends, like, because you think, what's the morning line of Mythical versus On Time Girl? Is they close?
Mythical is 5-2 on the morning line. On Time Girl is 9-5. I think they'll both be lower, but I think On Time Girl will be the favorite probably.
Okay.
But they'll both be shorter than that at post time. I mean, I do think everybody else will be higher, or at least their morning line. I think, including Sakane, you'll probably get at least double-digit odds on that horse.
Yeah.
Which seems to like value to me.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So what about doubles in that race? You like the 2 and the 11 in that prior race?
Yeah, I would definitely use doubles into Sakane. And even a smaller one with the 6.
On Time Girl?
No, with the 6 in the previous race, Pierre.
Oh, Pierre, that's right. Boy, that Pierre Sakane, if that came in, that's going to pay. Yeah, that will be, that'll be a 3-figure payout on a double, $2 double. All right. Anything else on that race? I'm kind of ignoring the
Desolate.
Yeah,
The
Tessellate. It's
other,
the one horse you didn't mention that probably will take some some
yeah,
interest.
I just don't like it. It was a very kind of slow speed figure at Tampa. Now maybe that's the track. I don't know. Um, he has like that one speed figure that win with, but it looks more like an outlier. But that's a horse that if it could get back to that race, it contends. But I'm just gonna kind of bet against that. I mean, she's a contender. I got her about 8-1. So I don't know.
Yeah, when I'm well, I don't like the way that one. I don't like the line on that one. On my Bet with the Best podcast, I had Len Friedman of the Sheets on, and one of the most negative patterns were these patterns where they run two kind of pair up two big efforts and come back on short rest, which is what this horse. She's coming back pretty quick off her last race at Tampa. He said those are the ones he always plays against, and I'm kind of the same way.
Yeah.
I think
Uh,
they're
Yeah.
trying to squeeze one more race out of this horse, I think, and it might be a
Yeah,
mistake.
and they probably had a big speed figure because she was wide because the speed figure I have is low. Um, the one is interesting not for this race, but in the future. And this shows notes again. Like we have a thing called projections and notes, and they're highlighted in yellow. And we say that we project this horse maybe better on stretching out or turf. And that's the one music burst. We think that this horse will do better stretching out on the grass. So it's a horse to watch. And it's got a kind of a good progressive pattern. So maybe not for today, but a horse you want to look at in the future when they do make that, if they do make that surface distance change.
Yeah, the horse has some siblings that have run well on the turf before. It's out of a Storm Cat mare,
Yeah.
so
We
that
don't look at that just so when people know when we do it is we have people that kind of been watching horses that watch horses in the morning with private workout people and stuff. So they know horse racing, but kind of like the what do you call the physicality of
yeah.
horses. And this is how we came up with this evaluation. And so that's something we're not looking at pedigree at that point. We're just looking at visually what the horse might bring to the table.
But
So,
when the pedigree matches the visual,
oh,
that's
it's great.
probably more
It's even better.
affirmation,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's even better. Okay. Anything
So
else
we're
on
going to move
that?
on. Yeah.
Okay, great.
We'll move on to the next race in the sequence. Again, this is a 3-year-old stakes race for fillies, but this is a turf race going 2 turns, a mile and a 16th, the Swedish Chance Stakes. So we're switching back to the turf again, another 2-turn route. This one has probably a solid favorite in the 8-horse Sister Troyenne, who's 2-1 on the morning line. Spirit Doll at 7-2 probably will be the second choice, the 11-horse. So what do you see this race setting up as, and what do you think of the favorites in here, John?
They're not bad, but I'm going to try to beat them with the 6 Storm's Wake. Comes out of the same race, the Ginger Brew. And Sister Troyenne had a perfect trip in that race. And I thought this horse was running on late, doing pretty well, especially against the flow of the track. Caught some traffic, and I thought closed really well, galloped out pretty nicely. I think that this horse is an obvious contender. And, I know got beaten the RD Peg against the 11. I just think this horse might be trending the right way. And this is the horse I have as kind of my main contender. I rate them equally, Sister Troyenne and Storm's Wake. I got them both as tier 1 minuses. So they're both at the same odds. But I think obviously Storm's Wake is going to be a better price. And really that's what I have to say about that. And
Storm's Wake's 8-1 on the morning line, just by the way.
Yeah, that's crazy. I think that's a bad morning line anyway. I think
yeah.
You're not gonna get anywhere near that. Don't expect to. Spirit Doll, big B plus in the turf stakes debut. Just get like we talked about before. It's got to kind of work out a trip from there. And so, beyond that, there's really not much in this field that I see maybe competing. I mean, Brad Pack I got as a very minimal contender, like kind of a tier 3 minus. But other than that, everybody else is running for whatever. Bert's Naughty Girl came out of the same race, but we think that horse needs a drop in class, and that's what the designation is in the optics note keyword. If you let me just go back to the plot that we talked about. Yeah. So again, I mean, plot is a little bit. I mean,
these are young horses that haven't got a lot.
Same thing.
A little bit less reliable.
Yeah, the 8 and the 11 look good. Probably look good on the surface distant plot. 6 looks fine. He's good on the standard circle, but position well. Nothing there is kind of jumping out at me. Kind of what I expected. So really kind of playing the notes, where one horse coming out of the same race, one ran really well, got a perfect trip. The other one ran real well and was against the flow and traffic. And I'm just trying to bet against maybe the horse getting a better trip and the other horse getting less of a better trip. As simple as that. And that's why I like Storm's Wake better, and especially at the price that it's going to be. I would say Storm's Wake is going to probably more be in the 4-1 range, don't you think?
I don't know.
4 to 5-1.
I think that horse was in a similar race and lost his sister Troyane last out and was 7-1. So
yeah.
I don't know. 6-1 seems reasonable price to expect on that horse.
I'll take it.
Given that, I mean, you never know for sure, right? But I don't think it's going to be that short. Maybe a little less than 8-1, but I don't think it's going to fall way down. So a couple of questions. One, Spirit Doll to me, first time routing, first time turf, just ran a huge race.
Yes.
Seems like there's upside there. You see, is it the post that's makes you rate that one lower than Sister Troyane and Storm's Wake? Because to me, that horse seems like the better of those three, at least from a talent or potential perspective. I'm just curious.
Let's see, what do I have the rating on this? Let me just go back. Yeah, I mean, just a tad below, but yeah, the post is worrying me. And then, ran such a big race, made 2 moves in the race, galloped out. I'm just, it has been given time. So
they haven't rushed the horse back.
I guess what happened to me when I handicapped this race initially, I was on the 6 and the 11. And then just before, that was the one race I went just before we got on that I actually saw the morning lines. And I was like, I was disappointed. It was only 7, I think it was 7-2, right? And maybe I'm being too hard on that. So I give the 6, I give the 11 a very good chance to win the race. I guess I'm really trying to play against the 8, and the only 2 horses that could beat the 8, in my opinion, is 6 and the 11. So maybe that's a solid exacta box. That's the way I would approach this race, and just use those 2 horses and try to beat the favorite. I'll get some value in whatever picks. If it's the pick 3, grass pick 3, or whatever, that would be my approach. Just use those 2, get rid of the favorite.
Okay, so there's one other horse you haven't mentioned that I thought was very interesting and will be a price, and that's the 2-horse Surprise Ending, who just had the one maiden win. Kind of got, it was with the flow in that race. And it was a closer kind of a race, but still, for me, anytime a horse can win a 2-turn route on the turf, first time out, that can settle and finish, that's kind of impressive. And it comes from a good barn, has a good post. All the other horses we talked about, except for Storm's Wake, are kind of out on the outside. This horse gets a nice inside post with a good rider, and Tyler Gaffleone gets in light, and it's getting 4 pounds from a horse like Sister Troyane and Spirit Doll. With the weight and the ground potential ground saving trip, that horse seems like I get that it might have been, got a kind of a setup last time, and the notes show that. But that was just its first race, and it's pretty good. I know. That's the only other one.
That's fair. I just can't. I can't. I have to go with there's certain things that I really look at, and setup is like one of the worst red keywords for next projection next time out. Horses regress. So that's what I'm really basing this on. I'm just, again, trusting my information. You got to make decisions somewhere, right? You got to say
Right.
you cut off, and you got to so this is one of those. And if you just look at the horse's plot, he's a circle. I mean, because the late pace was like
The
slow. I mean,
early
it
pace was really fast, though. So
was really
again, you got
fast.
to put
Yeah,
it in
yeah.
context, right? And
Yeah,
that's
I
the
got
only
it.
race that's on the plot. Is that one
I
time it
got
was
it.
in a fast-paced
No, I
race.
got it. I got it. I got it. But but right, I got it. Again, like that keyword to me is the most negative one, and I have to trust.
You
Not
can't.
trust
You
that.
can't. It's like you can't bring yourself to uh, bet on a horse that had a setup, and it's a bred setup keyword. Yeah.
It's like saying, it's like saying the same thing as like, how you get rid of without betting that horse with the green keyword. It's like it's not like, because people say, like, in the first race we talked about the horse having the best plot, and I was kind of talking about negative things about the horse. It's not to say that it's like it's the only thing, but in this case, it's the only thing I have on this horse, really. So I'm gonna have to bite the bullet, and yeah,
Just
you could
play
be
against
right.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you could be
Well,
absolutely right.
if this was a horse that was established form, and all of a sudden it won a race with a setup, and it really didn't run any faster than it has before, it just got the setup, then I'm totally with you. But that was
Yeah,
just its only race of its life, and it won the race,
yeah, no, it's
it overcame it was a hot pace, but it was the first time it ever ran. It's, I to me, you just don't know how good the horse could be. And, horses that run well, even when they get a setup in a turf route, that's hard. I mean, the thing of difference, like dirt sprints, not unusual for a good horse just to, run off the screen first time out. They just run as fast as they can, and they're faster than the other horses. But in a turf route, you can't do that. You've got to be smart. You got to learn how to relax. You got to be able to finish. There's a lot more mental pieces to the puzzle, and usually horses don't put it all together the first time out, and this one did. So I don't know. I just have higher regard for the potential there than you do, I think. Um, Recognizing I'd love it if I didn't have that red setup, then I'd really love it, right?
yeah.
Because of
No,
that setup, it's not going to be the same price. Let's say it had been in a race where it didn't get a setup and didn't win, then I'd love it the next time out because it'll even be buried, right? This case,
Absolutely, absolutely.
it's going to cost a price, and who knows? It's 8-1 in the morning line. It may get bet. I don't think it will get bet below that, but maybe it does, because it comes off that win that looks more impressive than it really was. So we'll see. That's why it's always about the price. But that's the one horse where you and I kind of have a little bit different opinion. The rest of it, I'm kind of with you, although I think I'm a little higher on Spirit Doll than you are, again, just because of how well it ran. And it didn't really have any
Yeah,
setup or
no,
anything.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
no. I'm high on that horse too.
Okay.
I did. I think I just got tainted by the morning line. I was like disappointed a little bit, but I don't know why. I mean, I should have expected the horse to be that. So
It's
anyway,
probably not a win bet at 7-2, right? But I
right?
think
Yeah,
it's
yeah. But
definitely a key
yeah.
contender. I'd say the most likely winner, but you may disagree with that.
No, no, I wouldn't disagree with that. I mean, you could go either way. I'm with you.
All right. So what about Betty in this one? You're thinking Storm's Wake, Spirit Doll. That was in kind of
Yeah,
Fade, Sister
yeah,
Troyane. What
yeah.
about in the picks?
Same
Uh,
way. I use both
uh,
because again, if I'm beating the favorite there, especially if it's the pick, I guess maybe that pick three. I don't know. I don't remember what the other
or
turf
the pick
races were.
four. Let's just say,
But the
or
pick four, yeah. So who do
and
we
the
have?
double to Sakane in the prior race. Would that be something
Yes,
you would consider? And
yes,
maybe even a pick three
absolutely,
going back to
absolutely.
the horses you like. So
Yeah, because I think we narrowed it down and we're beating the favorites. We're trying to beat the favorites in all three. The second leg, though, I mean, I'm still leery of the six.
mythical or a
No, the
six.
girl.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, yeah.
yeah.
Well,
So
maybe you could play more than one ticket and include her with the
yeah,
prices in the other
yeah,
legs. You don't
yeah,
have to
exactly,
you don't have to
exactly.
nail it cold in every leg.
Yeah,
But it's a good example where you kind of have opinions in these three races. You had no opinion in that first leg, so by just passing on that race, there's still all kinds of other ways you can bet it. You don't have to play the pick five, right? So it's a
that's
good
right.
example.
That's right.
All right. Anything else on this one before we go to the final feature race of the day?
No.
Okay. So we do go to the Holy Bull Stakes, which is a Derby points race. It's really the first major prep for the Derby at Gulfstream. It's going a mile and a 16th for 3-year-olds. A mile and a 16th at Gulfstream's a tricky distance because the race starts very close to that first turn. In this case, it's not a big field because we already know the 6 Butane is definitely scratching. The Baffert horse will not be running, and supposedly there's a very good chance that the 9 horse Game For will also not go. They haven't definitely ruled it out, but supposedly it's much more likely to wait and run at Tampa next week in the Sam Davis. All right,
yeah, I'm glad. I think that horse. I had that horse as probably potentially bombing the exotics in that race.
Well, there's a chance it might run, but everything I've read said it's very unlikely that it will go. They haven't.
Okay, and I'll explain why when we get into it.
All right, so let's talk about it. What do you think of this race? The favorite's going to be 9-5 morning line, 7 horse Nearly, who ran a huge number last time, and also Cannoneer, the 5 horse, also coming off a big race. It's 2-1 the morning line, both from the Brad Cox and Todd Pletcher. They're going to be your favorites. What do you think of these favorites? Are there ones you're going to lean on or bet against? What do you think of this race?
I'm probably going to bet again. I'm going to probably key Incredible in this race.
Incredible, the 1 horse. Okay, tell us what you like about that one.
Yeah. Oh, I just think that this horse has got 2-turn experience, ran probably the best race 2 turns, good speed figure. He plots well. He's got the best leg pace. As far as, especially in 2 turns, the only one really got any kind of form 2 turns that's significant. It just seems like he's on a progression line. I just think this horse a little freshener, and he's going to have to work out a rail trip, but it's just seems like a horse that is going to be around probably 5-1, I would imagine, around there. And I think it'll be good value. That's essentially it. I like to play these horses that have had the experience, especially the 2 turns experience. What else did I had on this horse? Hold on a second. I know I have some more information on this horse, why I like this horse. Bear with me. I go to focus. Yeah, progressive, freshened since the strong rallying, race in the Grade 3 Churchill race, looks steady, 2-turn experience. That's really what I like about this horse. Where like some of the other horses are going to be doing it for the first time, come off perfect trips like the 5. The horse got a big speed figure in the last race, but was a maiden win, perfect trip, and only got a B notes grade. Like when we talked before about, we like to look at horses that get B pluses coming up when they're trying to move up in class. So obviously you got high profile connection, so that will just make the horse more heavily back. First time 2 turns. So, when I kind of just compare those 2, I'm with the 1, Incredible. And Global Advisor, the horse, 1 debut, that horse was visually impressive. But I get concerned. They can, big efforts like that, they kind of bounce or regress a little bit, especially trying 2 terms for the first time. And the quality of that field to me was suspect. Nearly, that's the other one would probably be the other horse I would consider. Stretches out to 2 turns, which is new, but not like the 5. This horse is previously projected to stretch out by notes. So we had a stretch on this horse previously. It's got 2 consecutive B+ grades. The last with a very high speed figure. And the only concern is maybe that horse peaked and maybe there's some regression. But for me, it's those 2. I think that Bavaro is a nice colt, but it gets a major class test. And, outside New York company, first time 2 turns, that's a difficult undertaking as far as I'm concerned. But that's, just obviously another contender. And I think that's it. I think I talked about the major contenders.
Yeah, so I'll go through and make a comment on a few of them. Incredible, just one thing. You can watch some of their workouts on XBTV. They're not as good as they used to be about catch and works. And in Florida, they have all these training centers, so you miss a lot of them. But I did see one of his works, and he looked really good, I thought, in his workout. So he seems to be training up to the race pretty well. And, he has been freshened up, so it's good to see him training well. Like you said, I don't know if he has the upside. He does have some upside, and he is kind of progressive. And he gets the inside. Like I said, that's not necessarily a bad place to be at that distance at Gulfstream. And he doesn't have to have the lead. He might get a nice pocket trip. So, he could end up working out a really nice trip. So I kind of see what you like in that one. Cannoneer, I'll just mention that from a breeding standpoint, he is a half to Midnight Bourbon and Gervin, two horses that are pretty good, and some other really good horses. So he's out of like a blue hen mare, and that has produced horses that have, done pretty well going 2 turns out of into mischief, almost a $2 million yearling. So, that horse will probably take money in its entire life, and it's kind of showed quite a bit of potential. And then Nearly, another one who is kind of bred to go long. And one thing I'll say about his last race, he got kind of hammered out of the gate. He got really banged around, and so he didn't have a perfect trip and still ran that big number. So that was pretty impressive. Now, like you said, he could regress off that.
Right.
But it does seem like, stretching out. He's kind of bred and just looks like a horse. The distance is not going to be an issue for him. So, we'll have to wait and see. But both, Cannoneer and Nearly are going to get hammered. The other horse you mentioned, Global Aviator, is the one I'm a little interested in, just because, maybe that wasn't the greatest of races, but some of the horses have come back to run much faster numbers than they were given out of that race. One of the horses came back and ran a good second. A couple other ones improved and he ran better than they had before. So maybe that wasn't such a bad race. And that horse kind of just was completely left at the gate. So, I thought that was pretty impressive to overcome that start at 6 furlongs at Gulfstream and win. So, maybe that horse has the upside.
And he does plot really well because he obviously hasn't run the surface distance. They really plot well on standard. He's got a big score. He finished. Yeah, I mean that was a good race. There's no doubt.
The way he broke, it looked like there was no way he would possibly win that race. So he's the one I think. Now he's only 5-1 in the morning line, which kind of shocked me. The connections aren't the kind to get bet. All he has is that one maiden win by a neck. I can't believe he'll be 5-1. I gotta believe he'll be higher. So that's why I'm thinking at 5-1, I'm not interested at all. But I thought he'd be more like 10 or 12-1. At that price, I'm kind of interested.
I have him as 5-1 actually on my fair value. I have Incredible 2-1. Cannoneer. I mean, the other thing is that maiden race that he won really wasn't that. It hasn't come back strong at all. So it's another concern for me. So I got him equally at 5-1, and then Nearly, he's going to be 4-1 for me. So I guess if Global Aviators does float above that 5-1, then it's another horse that I'd be interested in. But for me, it's Incredible is probably the play.
Yeah, I'm expecting. I would be really surprised if Global Aviator and Incredible are close to the same price. That makes no sense at all. I mean, to me, I don't see that. Incredible is much more accomplished. He won the Street Scent Stakes. How could he be 9-2 and Global Aviator, all he's got is a 1-start maiden win by a neck, be almost the same price? That doesn't. I don't see how that's. And no, if he was trained by Cox or Fletcher or somebody, but he's not, So I don't get it. I think that's just a bad morning line. So I could be wrong. At 5-1, he's not a bet. He's probably about fair value, like you said. But at twice that price, which I think he'll be, he gets me interested. And he's the kind that you could use maybe underneath if you're afraid of. You could connect him with like Incredible if you liked him, or if you're afraid of Cannoneer or Nearly, you could play him underneath those as well. To me, that's the play. For you, it's Incredible, right? That's where you're, and you say he's the most likely winner, right? That's how you've rated him.
I do.
Yeah, so that's a great value if based on your opinion, because I think you'll get at least that 9-2 probably, because I do think they will really pound
Yeah, they
the
will.
5 and the 7, right?
They will. Yeah.
And so you could get, 5, 6, 1 or higher on Incredibolt. So that's probably a really good play. So are you thinking you bet this one then, Incredibolt to win, and what else?
Yes. I think I don't know if I bet him to win because I think it all depends on how well I handicap the other races. I probably lean in on the doubles with this horse too, and I feel like I'll be alive to the double. But if I'm not alive to the double, yes, and he is above that, anywhere above like 4-1, 4-1 or above, I'm playing him to win. 5-1, above around 5-1 or better.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, you'll probably be alive to a big pick 4 to him by this point too, right?
yes,
So a win bet would be
yes,
redundant. So do
yes.
you like to do that if you like the prior race and you have a horse in this race, you bet the doubles, and if you're live, you don't worry about the win bet. But if you're out of the double, then you might bet him to win. Is that kind of the
Right.
way you
Yeah.
play it?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, anytime you get the horse either via exact or exotic, try, the horses that you're keen on, you're trying to get more value than, because let's face it, you don't win all the time. We know that.
Right.
So when you win, you want to cash, right? So you want to maximize the value. So if you can do it in for instance, a horse that's 5-1, you're trying to get maybe 10-1, 12-1 if you can create a scenario, 100-1, whatever it is. And that's what I'm trying to do. So if I can go from 30-1, from 5-1 to 30-1 to 35-1, that's a lot better, right? And so that's because then you get paid for that. I mean, every time I was kind of got into a competitive situation, any of those contests in the Breeders' Cup, it was mostly a big double. Well, that put me in the position, because like I said, if you have a strong opinion on one of the races with a long shot, and then you just kind of even get a medium price horse the other races, you can really crush it. So yeah, so that's the way I'd be playing it. From an exotic standpoint, just not knowing enough, like if I can see the 7 or the 5, like you said, going to be that. So I'm really not interested in probably playing the race vertically. I would just, unless I do like.
It's a small field too, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. So it's just not a lot of value. So really, I'd be leaning in on the doubles or pick 3s or pick 4s if like I said, if I feel strong. And I think at least I feel pretty strongly about the 3 previous races, the way I can try to create some value out of that.
yeah, it seems like you have opinions in each of the last 4 legs. So, you could go with pick 4, pick 3, doubles. You got all kinds of options, right?
Yeah.
And the verticals in some of the races, especially the ones with the bigger fields, like the 11th and the 9th, the turf races. There's vertical plays might make a lot of sense in there. So
Yes. Yes.
yeah, that's one thing. Typically, I'm not sure exactly why, but the turf races tend to draw bigger fields, and that's what appeals. That's why I like the turf racing so much, is because you typically have the bigger fields that open up a lot more opportunities in the vertical bets, to make a score. And I think this is a good example.
Why is that? I mean, because it seems like that's also the case on synthetic races.
Well, certainly it's that I think in stakes races in particular, it's that way just because the top barns have all the good horses and they don't ever run them against each other. So you always have small fields, in these dirt stakes typically, unless it's, a grade 1, a big grade 1, even the grade 1s. But like, a race like the Breeders' Cup or a Derby prep. But outside of that, there's just not enough good horses, right? And they're all in a few barns, I think is the problem. Where in turf racing, I think the horses are spread out a lot more. Now, there are exceptions like, Chad Brown in New York and D'Amato maybe in California, but elsewhere, typically, a lot of barns have decent turf horses. And so they're all running them where it makes sense. I think is part of it.
Is there a case to go to all or more turf races? I know weather is a problem in that.
Yeah, the problem is weather and wear, right? That's the problem. If you have these long meetings, it's a challenge to keep the turf course, and Gulfstream Park by the end of the meet will be the DERF, the Gulfstream Park DERF. As much as they try to move the rails around and stuff, it's just hard to keep those, especially if they have weather, keep those turf races in good condition. Where like in Europe, they only run for a short period of time at any one meet, right? So they can run on turf all the time.
And what about synthetic surfaces? I mean, it seems like it's working in Gulfstream. It works in Woodbine. It works in some other tracks that have deployed.
Yeah, that's certainly a controversial topic. People have strong opinions. I think where it's worked the best is where they have pretty much all synthetic and turf. They don't have the dirt, because when they have the dirt, then there's just fewer races on any surface, and you don't get as much of a read. You're constantly switching surfaces and stuff. But like, Turfway or Woodbine, where they run on synthetic pretty much exclusively, maybe, and along with the turf, that seems to work better than like Gulfstream, where they've got dirt, turf, and synth, and you got horses constantly going back and forth between all the surfaces, and that seems to be, the players seem not like that as much. But
they run a lot of synthetic now, Gulfstream. And in fact, a comment from the guy who does, I don't want to give his name up, but the guy who does our stuff at Gulfstream during this season said that he's seen some biases recently, and he thinks it's because of the maintenance, right? Because all year long, they're doing so much. I don't know if they're doing so much running on there that they're maybe maintaining at a different, I don't know, maintaining at a different level or a different, what have you. I don't know, because they run so many races on synthetic now. They really do.
What bias does he think that?
So the bias, he said, early in the year, early in January, he saw a lot of speed rail bias against rail. Like that's why we saw some of those against the bias. Those are horses up forward and on the rail. He saw that during the early part of the month. So we'll see. We've kind of pointed some of those out.
So I mean, that's a hot topic. I do think it makes a lot of sense in winter to have the synth racing, because it gives a place for those turf horses, the lower quality ones. Like Turfway, I think, has been a really good option for horses that like to run turf. I think having that synth track in New York for winter racing is going to improve the winter racing in New York, but we'll see.
Yes, I think so. We'll see. It's an interesting topic.
And definitely one where you'll get very passionate opinions.
Oh my goodness! Yeah,
either direction.
I am not. I am not passionate about it. But
from a betting standpoint, I like synthetic. I don't mind betting it at all, and that's what I'm most interested in, because you typically have good sized fields, and you don't typically have extreme biases that you have to.
Right.
And you typically have horses from all the barns running, and not just one or two barns that dominate. So
yeah, and then you have a shot. I mean, you have a shot. Like so many. Have you watched dirt racing? I don't know. I've watched it for 100 years. It's like most of the times, it's like you could tell, like in 3 seconds, yours has no chance to win the race. Right. Synthetic is like everyone's got a chance. It's almost like everyone's got a chance to win, no matter where you are on the track. Some days, it just seems that way to me.
Yeah, there's definitely
Yeah.
And you have to handicap that way too. You have to price the horses with more. There's got to be a bigger band of their likelihood of winning, just because seems like it's, like you said, on dirt, it tends to be more predictable. I think a lot of times some people like that, but I like having a little more uncertainty. It makes it a little more of a challenge, and you have a better chance maybe to get some prices that are, where the public makes a mistake and you can take advantage of it.
Right.
All right. Anything else on the card? I think we covered.
No, it's a pretty good card. Yeah.
Anything else you want to say about optics, again, for people interested in maybe looking at the tools? Tell them again how they can get
you go
there.
to opticseq.com. And you can look at info, and you can see all our products, and there's videos. People ask me to make videos. I made so many videos, but I'm coming out of a issue personally, and I'm trying to get back into doing more for people who could see. But there are a lot of videos there on how to use the products. And there's also, I've done a lot of races and analyzed a lot of races with Emily. So if people want to look at previous races, go to it, start there. Again, opticseq.com. Essentially, we have two plans right now. It's a bronze plan, which you get the plot and the grid and that tool we talked about with the, doing the ratings of the horses and getting the fair market thing. And then there's the silver, which really incorporates the green report and notes, which are important components to our products. So, yeah, have at it. If you have any questions, just reach out to us on our website and send us an email or out on Twitter. My handle there is @OpticsEQ. So that's me, John Doyle. And yeah, love to engage. I know a lot of people are interested in this week, and hopefully we helped a little bit. But again, we're going to have Focus is one of the products you get with the silver plan, and kind of my analysis. And I'm going to look at what Chris said, maybe tweak some things. It's always helpful to get other opinions, especially when they're well thought out. And so, yeah, go to opticseq.com, silver plan, and pull up the Focus part, and it'll be there with my analysis and my shot at the fair market values of the horses in the races.
All right. Well, I want to thank you, John, for joining us. It was fun chatting with you as always. I think optics is a different way to look at the races, and so it gives you a different way to view it, which is always good. It's always, you want to separate yourself from the crowd. You want to think about things differently, and this is one way. If you feel like you're in a rut and you want to, try something new, I encourage you to give it a shot, because there's a lot of good information that's presented in a way that might make you think about the race differently, and that's what you need to do to, get ahead in a pari-mutuel wagering environment. It's Darwinian, and survival to the fittest, and you got to constantly adapt and evolve. So, Kurt, go ahead, John.
No, I'm sorry. You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. I agree with that 100%. That was our motto when we started, and we haven't stayed still either. We've evolved our product, more, and then we're actually looking at evolving it again. Now we're looking at some other things. Because this whole information age keeps shifting. You got to kind of stay up with it and make sure you're evaluating everything that's coming on. AI is a big thing, and there's some good things about it and some not so good things about it. And we're still in the evaluation process with that. So more to come. We want to keep evolving, like Chris said. That's important in this game.
Important for everybody, for information providers, for the players, and for the players themselves. So I want to thank you, John. Thank you for putting out the great product with optics. I use it every time I look at a race, so I personally will endorse it. And I want to thank again all our listeners out there. This will conclude show number 346 of the Sport of Kings podcast. Good luck this weekend, and please enjoy the Brooklyn Boogaloo Blowout. Cheers.